So since we have already had the pre-show before we got going on this show, and if anybody was having to peek at a message during that time, we are now live, and I have a red box in the upper left corner that says that we've actually been going for almost 30 seconds. So Ben, to reward your politeness of asking these ladies what they were about and how excited you were about this, would you repeat, just because this is going to be for posterity, and for everyone who goes, I really am not alone in whatever I'm experiencing that may be more typical or more prevalent in aging, that may be your second round. And this round is the same in this way and really different in that way of perhaps becoming a caregiver or a worried person or whatever it is. I'm actually going to start with Ben. Go right ahead.
Yeah, just some background in history, you mean, Christine, of what I did?
What you said to the ladies was, I help train, coach. What did you, what verb did you use?
Well, usually train is a good word. So I was the leader of training for a national senior living company for over 20 years. And in that process, I went in totally blind. I had just finished up a master's degree in literature, of all things. I met the CEO, and they'd just done a study about how much they were losing in turnover every year because of training. And so he said, well, you can write, you can teach, why don't you try it? And 20 years later, it had been an outstanding run. They had brought in, because I didn't know anything, they brought in all the directors of the company to talk with me, and I converted things to training. And the piece that really grabbed me was dementia. I worked with housekeepers to executives, but the dementia care was really what grabbed me. And in 2022, we got the actual diagnosis from my mom of Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
And there'd been signs before that. And it's been, it's strong in the women on her side of the family. So it wasn't a surprise, but devastating nonetheless. And I realized, first, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know just because I could do the training. There were a lot of things that when it's your mom, everything shifts. And I got an education I never wanted about that. And second, I realized how absolutely astoundingly lucky I was, because I had the top minds in my company at my disposal telling me who I could trust, telling me this sounds right, this doesn't sound right. Mom just did this. What do? I remember calling one of the national nursing directors at probably 7:00 at night on a Sunday saying, oh my God, what do I do? XYZ just happened. And I had an expert on the other end of my phone like that. And I realized how many family caregivers do not have that. I realized how profoundly lucky I was to have all of those resources at my disposal. And that's a lot of what prompted me to start Illumined. Was I want to be there for other people like those friends and colleagues were for me. So that's why I work with home and family caregivers a lot, just educating on dementia, what it is, what the progress looks like, what this disease does to people, and how we can make life as enriching, as engaged as possible for as long as possible. How do we, it's not the end of life, it's a change in life. So how do we adapt to that change? And then on the professional caregiver side, going in and doing things that, are, different, and I think a little bit revolutionary in our industry from a self-care perspective, from an ergonomic perspective, and really re-examining these things that we've sort of taken for granted. I mean, if you look at self-care and ergonomics, when we need to adjust that, we adjust frequency typically. Someone gets injured, we come in, we do the same ergonomic training that got them there in the first place. We just do it more often, and we document it better so that we can pass state requirements, right? We can make OSHA happy. There are pieces in there that I think we need to radically re-examine. So that's what I'm up to on on the Illumined side of the equation.
Training, that
Training.
word. I've heard it applied to absolutely everything. We'll just put a great big thing of technology. So here's a person with just what they could really use, or just what their loved one could really benefit from, or both.
Yeah.
And inadequate training, and it becomes a very expensive paperweight. With a power tool, you can either injure yourself or create that pergola deck that the whole neighborhood goes, can you build me one of those? Training.
And one thing I like to,
yeah.
Sorry, but one thing I like to put out about training, because it's so common, I did get to go in with an education in education. I taught at university level for 4 or 5 years before I ever started in retirement communities. And, one thing I firmly believe is that the only marker, and when I would train people on how to train, this was my mantra, the only marker in whether you had good training or not is whether you produce change. If we all go and sit in a room for an hour and we leave that room and nothing is different in the way that we perform or behave, if nothing has changed, you have not trained. That is, I'm adamant about that. We do so much healthcare training that doesn't make any difference. Like the ergonomic training, we come in and everybody nods their head. Oh yes, I get it. And then we go out and injure ourselves again the same way. So if we're not producing change, we are not training. That's my thesis as a good English major.
Great. Thank you for being an excellent leader, because the best leaders lead other leaders to become leaders who lead more leaders. I mean, it's just, you're not just saying, now learn just this part, but don't know all of it, because I want to keep my position. It's like, know everything, so that if I simply was unavailable or I was gone, this would continue on. You should have everything. You should be able to practice. You should know that it's okay to ask all the different kinds of questions, the dumb ones, the hard ones, I'm not supposed to be thinking like this. Right now, I want to run down the street screaming and tearing my hair out. I'm not supposed to be thinking that. And it's like, and yet you are not alone. And even if you were the only person who had ever gotten into a crisis situation for which you were never prepared, if you were the only one that felt that way, that needs to be addressed. And like you said, it needs to change. And you need to feel the change, see that, actually measure the change. It's like, I am feeling that feeling less than once a week now, instead of more often. Ben, thank you so much. Is there any one last thing at this moment? We're not done. We're great. But is there something else that you wanted to finish this part with? And then I'll move on to one of the ladies.
Sure. I mean, I think when it goes to home and family caregivers, what you said, Christine, is really critical. I'm not supposed to be feeling this feeling. Well, you go to, and part of that is, it's one of the AA mantras, right? You're only as sick as your secrets. And you go to an Alzheimer's support group, and even on Facebook, you go to a Facebook, and people are saying things in there that, I have thought nobody feels like they want to just pick up the television and throw it across the room because they just can't deal with it anymore. No, everybody feels like that. And, when that's part of training too, is, that's part of that self-care training that I do, is the radical acceptance, the accepting that that's your feeling. And now when we accept it, we can do something with it. But as long as we're fighting, as long as it's secret, as long as it's this thing we don't want to acknowledge, there is no change, and we stay stuck in that place. So yeah, I think just being honest with ourselves is a huge part of training, just acknowledging where we're really at, and being willing to say, I need help, please. And having instructors who understand that and welcome it, and are very, I am deeply appreciative of a student who's willing to be that vulnerable, because that means they're changing. They're on the road. So that's what I'd close this segment with.
Wow. And Echo Box Memory Vault just jumped in to say hello. Oh, this has got to be the husband and wife couple. You guys tell me if my memory is going well today. Echo Box Memory Vault. I just remember the two of them being on the screen, on the same screen together. And then there were other people as well. A number of weeks ago. Thank you so much for popping in. Are any of you already associated with Echo Box Memory Vault?
Mm.
Well, there you go. That's another one that you get a hold of today. Eve, did you want to make any comments on what Ben has been putting out?
Well, I will say that everything that Ben has said, I fully agree with. And in fact, dementia and having a loved one with dementia was how Conversations to Remember came about. So Conversations to Remember is a nonprofit that was founded back in the early days of the pandemic. And the initiative came about because I had a loved one with dementia living in a long-term care community who got locked down, and we were doing video calls all the time. And then I also have my son was in high school at the time, and he had, prior to the pandemic, been visiting seniors in long-term care communities who had dementia on a weekly basis. And when they were locked down, he so we were doing all these video calls with his grandmother, and he was too. And he contacted the community he had been volunteering at and asked if he could do that with some of the residents there that he used to volunteer with. And that was how Conversations to Remember was born. He went ahead and started doing video calls with a friend of his, and they told some of their friends, who said, wow, this sounds like an amazing thing. And the students just came out of the woodwork. And well, we started with my son in high school. We have really focused on young adult, undergraduate, college students. And what we do is we facilitate weekly video calls between older adults and young adult college students. And it was for older adults who had dementia. But the very first time that a caregiver said to us, I have an older adult in my life who doesn't have dementia, but could really benefit from and enjoy a weekly video call with college students, we expanded our mission immediately. And we provide these weekly video calls to any older adult who would benefit from it. And our student volunteers are from all across the country, as our older adults. And we put together a group of 2 to 3 students with that one particular adult. And every week at the same day and time, like clockwork, those students get on their call with the older adult, and they hang out and talk for an hour. And it's just wonderful conversation, and they become friends. And the calls are for an hour. Sometimes they run longer than an hour because there's lots of things to talk about some weeks. And it's just to go on what Ben was talking about with training, how training is important. Our volunteers are trained. Nobody just gets on a weekly call. They go through extensive training, including training about dementia and how to respond to certain symptoms that will come up during a weekly call. And it's unique on a video platform of how you would respond versus how you would do it in person. And so we train them in that. We train them on communication skills and make sure that they are good communicators and can chit chat and really just talk. And we do this, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're a nonprofit, so we don't charge for this. It is free for all, and um, anybody and everybody is welcome to join our program and take part in these weekly calls, video calls. So,
Wow. This has to go through um, a switchboard. This has to happen correctly. A person with a concern who's at either end of the call needs to know I've got backup.
they
I
do.
can say, did I make that person angry? And it could be either the one or the other. They
Well,
seemed to get sullen or something, or any other concerns. Yeah.
Well, our program is highly curated. We don't just say, okay, everybody get on a call and then, walk away from it. We remind the senior or their caregiver before each call with a phone call. We make sure they have no trouble getting on from a technology perspective. We make sure that the students are able to join each week. We're proactive on that end. Then when the call starts, we have somebody doing real-time support that logs onto the call, makes sure everybody gets on, everybody can see and hear each other. And then when the call is going on, we have real-time support that the students can reach out to via a messaging application and tell us if there's an issue. And immediately we have somebody who gets involved. So most of the time, issues are technology issues. Somebody can't see someone, somebody can't hear someone. But sometimes we do have the older adult is upset, especially somebody with dementia who thinks, I need to go to work now, or I need to go to a meeting right now, or I need to go um, to uh, to the store. Things that the students know the older adult doesn't have to do because they're in a long-term care community and they can't do these things anymore. And so if the older adult gets agitated, the students have a way of in real time reaching out to us, and in real time we're on top of it. We're contacting their caregiver, we're helping with it. So yes, I agree. It can't be just something where you put it together and close your eyes. There must be support for it, and that's what we do. We
Ben,
never
you had
record the calls, by the way. I'm sorry.
sure.
Somebody had asked if we
I asked a
record the
question on
calls.
the side.
Oh,
I have a training
sorry.
question.
Okay.
Sure. I had asked Eve, just in terms of like follow-up training, my first reaction might be, hey, and I know there's, issues with this, so I'm curious how you deal with it.
Sure.
My impulse would be, hey, I want to record the calls and then, kind of deconstruct them with people after the fact. You said you don't do that.
We don't, but what we do is every student fills out a feedback form after every call. They also have the ability to reach out to me immediately, like I'm in that messaging app, whether during the call, after the call, if there's any issues, any concerns. Monthly, the older adult, or if it's somebody with a caregiver, fills out a survey. So that's how we can make sure that if there's anything that needs to be addressed, we can address it, as well as all of the older adults or their caregivers I'm in contact with. Not every day, obviously, but I've developed relationships with them so that if there's ever an issue, they reach out to me and we can resolve it. But really, we haven't had serious issues. We've been doing this for 5 years. We have not had any serious issues. And mostly, to be honest, it's technology based.
Yeah.
We we are on top of that, and we, like I said, do it in real time, walk everybody through it. So, we've gotten even older adults who are home alone, who obviously don't have dementia. We get them on the calls. So that's kind of how to answer Ben's question in the short form. No, we don't record the calls, but we are very much on top of if there's any issues. Everybody knows they are supposed to let us know.
That's amazing. I have this one image in my head. So, I was working in the industry when COVID hit. And so, we had 50, 60 buildings across the country that we were trying to keep everybody safe. And I remember, we'd kind of locked stuff down and people couldn't go in and out. And there was this one picture of a family member and their loved one with their hands on the glass of the building, touching not touching hands, but up to each other. And that just, it was so heartbreaking and so beautiful. And the work that you did to bring people together during that is, thank you so much. That's all I can say is thank you so much.
Thank you. But one of the things, we started this during the lockdown, but one of the things that became really obvious is how necessary it is even after the lockdown. And we have some older adults who do these weekly calls who are the most active people, like independent older adults who go out on their own, who have social lives, and they just want more. And they love getting to see their quote kids. And because, yes, these are college students, they are not children, but to these older adults, it's their kids. And they're so excited to catch up every week with their kids. And so, yes, we do have many, many older adults in our program who have dementia, but we range the gamut. We have, like I said, active older adults who are independent, who are able to benefit from this, even post-pandemic. And because it's virtual, what's really exciting for some of the people on these calls is you might have an older adult I'm in New Jersey. So let's say you have an older adult in New Jersey. They might have one student on their call who's in Hawaii, another who's in Illinois, and another one in Puerto Rico. And the interesting conversations that go on because of the geographic diversity is fantastic.
That is great for brains. What I'm doing here, one man, he joked, but I mean, I've met him face to face personally. He joked, but Roger said, "You should be paying us for coming onto your screen because you are thinking about what we are saying. You're thinking about what you're going to do next. You're thinking about the different time zones that we're in. You're thinking about our different, the ways in which we have commonalities all at the same time. We're probably taking several days off of any possible dementia for you, because we're giving you this dynamic and making you use both sides of your brain, and you're already building new neurons at, in my mid 60s, I'm building new neurons instead of going, just sit in front of a TV. I want to walk the same place every day. I want to go to the same thing, and I don't want to meet anyone new. Whatever. I don't know. There's people who are like, I'm done, and it isn't because they're unhealthy, but they just kind of have this feeling of, close the patent office. There isn't going to be anything new. Someone in leadership in the US said, just close the patent office. Everything that needs to be invented has been invented. This was way before computers, let alone everything else that's, medically and just points of fascination. Sherry, you are not sad that your technology worked beautifully today and that you've come to meet these people. Let's get to know you a little bit better, and anything that you wanted, that you've had bubbling up while these people have been talking about these great things.
Well, I want to say this before I go too far afield. Ben, you said something to me that really touched on why my motto is what it is. My motto is, caregiving is what you do for your loved one. Giving care is what you do for both of you. And I think that for family caregivers, we have a really tough time integrating care for ourselves. we get so focused, and the inertia of those needs just sort of drag you downstream to the point where we often forget that we're an integral partner in this. And so in my logo, I use the teeter-totter because we all know that a teeter-totter can't move unless there are two people working it. And so as that family caregiver, your life is in constant motion, swinging back and forth between yourself and your needs and your loved ones. And something else that you said that I've learned after I developed this motto, and that is that the hardest part of being a family caregiver isn't doing all of the extra tasks. It's how you're feeling while you're doing all of those extra tasks. And that's the part that often doesn't get discussed quite as much. So Christine, when you said there are days when you feel like running down the street, screaming, pulling your hair out, I smiled, because at the beginning of my journey, that's where I was. And learning that I have to acknowledge that I am feeling this. I have to find the support networks I need so that I am not running down the streets screaming, pulling my hair out. I have to be involved in this. I have to be considered. And I think, as I said, it's tough for family caregivers because it sounds a little bit selfish. But another Sherryism I have about selfishness and being a family caregiver is that you have to be selfish enough to be self-preserving. Because at the end of the day, if something happens to you, as much as you're trying to do all of this and you want to care for this person and you're doing and doing and doing, but if something happens to you, where will that person be? So you must be selfish enough to be self-preserving.
Yeah, you are the only you got. You're the self. That's how we are raised. If we have any parent, I guess, worth their salt, they have started with, learn to reach out and grab hold of that thing that you need. Be able to move forward, express yourself. Instead of screaming, can you tell mommy what you are thinking? How do you feel? You're just all these things, and that shouldn't shut down because someone has needs. You are willing to provide those needs for whatever reasons. You're the only one around, even though you don't have much in the way of a relationship. Or you're just a worried neighbor that's just going, you know what? I've got flexible time. I'll go over and see them twice a day if that is going to help, to just whatever it is, you are willing to do that. And so what you've been raised to do all along, to make sure that you take care of things, you end up with a car and somebody in your life says, now you need to take care of this car because it's going to need to take care of you. You don't want to be stranded somewhere because you just didn't change the oil. All those things are still in play as you continue to give care. I was hired. I did not caregive for a family member. I was hired. And even then, I was trained not to stand with my feet in the same line, that if I was doing anything with this person at all, to always have my feet at an angle as if I was expecting weight to come against me at any moment, as if I was going to need to let this person come against me and slide downward to the floor gently as possible rather than go. And, things like that, trained to use words like nevertheless. The doctor is expecting this to happen. So how are we going to deal with it together? If it was up to me to get this person into the car and off to an appointment, No matter what the conversation, nevertheless, this is going to occur.
I giggled.
All these little things that I was trained for, and my shift would end. Someone would show up for me at the end. Please continue, Sherry.
Oh, I giggled at that because my mom, sometimes she wouldn't want to get in the car to go wherever, whether it was the grocery store or to the doctor's or whatever. But then when it clicked that, oh, hey, I like riding in the car, then when we got to the destination, first I had to tussle to get her in the car. Then I had to tussle her to get out of the car because she didn't want to stop riding. So you learn all of this, and it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what she's experiencing. And there were sometimes we would run away to Florida to escape the Chicago winter. Mm-hmm. And she'd go to the grocery store with me, and she would decide that she didn't want to get out of the car. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to roll down the windows, lock the door, set the alarm. When she's ready, the car will scream and I'll go get her. We'll just work with this as it is. And when she's ready, we'll come in. You ready? Or sometimes I'd have to coax her out, sort of like, how when you do if you have a pet, you put the little treats down in a line to coax them out. So you kind of go, hey, you ready for a cold drink? Well, you got to come out the car to get your cold drink. So, yeah. And it's about thinking about that experience and saying, okay, she's having an experience. How do I want to experience this with her? How do I want to do this in a way where I'm not overwhelmed? I'm not frustrated. Because if I get frustrated, she's going to sense it. Even though her capacity is diminishing, she's going to sense it. And it's just not going to be good for anybody. So acknowledging me and knowing that, okay, here we are together. We're having an experience together. Let's walk through it together.
You might enjoy watching Wine, Women, and Dementia, a documentary by Kitty Norton. Are you familiar with it already?
No, I'm not.
You might really enjoy it because she goes on a journey to thank the people across the USA who would happen to be available online at 3 a.m. when mom just has to get up and decorate a Christmas tree that is not a Christmas tree, and those aren't decorations. And she would see that they were online and they were willing to say, yep, this with my loved one. And, and just be able to snarky joke about stuff and just get that out with no judgment. So after her mom passed away, she went on a journey and documented it all and put it together into movie, Wine, Women, and Dementia. And I feel like it's available. I know that it's been, I'm going to say OPB. I'm not sure that I'm right, but you can look up Kitty Norton or Wine, Women, and Dementia and find out where it is now available. She did the Indie Film Festival, and it won awards and all that sort of thing. And it's just different. It's different because she goes, it's Dad's fault. He just had to go and die. And he was handling everything. And he didn't train us because he didn't need us, because he was still keeping life going and keeping mom okay. And everything was just fine. And my sister and I were like, ugh. The more miles between us, the better. And she was just really open about it. And she's like, hey, sister, you want to go on this trip with me across the US, stuck together in an RV, which I've already christened, is going to be named after my mom, our mom, and go with me and do this documentary. And it's like, we have been through it with mom. We can handle an RV trip. And that's just, it's just the reality part of it, when it's not all sweet, when it's just, I can't even function anymore. And knowing that she had someone else. Oh, goodness. Sherry, your information has come up as praxis. So, praxis for care.
Yes.
Tell us specifically what that is.
Well, my background is in education policy studies. So one of the fancy words we learned while they were stuffing things into my head in a doctoral program was this word praxis, which is a fancy word for describing bringing theory into action. And so I always liked that word. And so what praxis for care is, we talk about the theories around dementia. We talk about the theories that undergird training. But now let's put this into practice. So praxis for care is my theory for what I discussed in my book, OMG, I'm the Grown Up. And the praxis for care helps people understand how to ride that teeter-totter between the needs of your loved one as well as yourself.
Thank you. Well, while you've been listening so politely, Ben and Eve, any thoughts coming up for either of you?
Well, I have to say, Sherry, I've been on your journey, unfortunately. And one of the things that resonated with me when you were speaking is about how you need to have breaks, and you have to take, if you're the caregiver, you must take care of yourself. I fully agree with that. And that's one of the things that I think, also, not to bring everything back to Conversations to Remember, but to bring everything back to Conversations to Remember, that's one of the things that we hear all of the time from the family caregivers, that they are able to do something for an hour while their loved one is on the video call. And I'm referring to their loved one who has dementia, typically. But, I hear about people, I made dinner while my loved one was doing the call. And it was a nice break. The kids were keeping the older adult involved and busy, so to speak, but really engaged is a better word for it. And so in many ways, Conversations Remember provides some respite care. It's only an hour, but an hour could be an eternity for some people at some moments. So, I agree with you. Caregivers need breaks, they need care. They can't just focus all their attention on their loved one, because otherwise they won't be able to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of you, I just love everything you're doing. You guys are doing such amazing work, and I love your book title, Sherry. Very, very cool. One thing I really emphasize in self-care for me is, and I this isn't entirely true, but I say it to make a point. You can't put self-care on a calendar. Okay? If you're looking for an event that will give you self-care, that'll help, but it'll only help going in with the right preparation work inside. And if you aren't if you aren't able to accept where your loved one is or the stress that you're feeling, and one of my friends who's a therapist always said, quit shoulding all over yourself.
Right.
Get rid of that should, because should doesn't live here. Right here is where we exist. Right here is where we give care. Having a goal doesn't exist. That's out there somewhere. What is your commitment right here? I like commitment rather than goal, because it's about now. It's about where I am right now and what I'm committed to and who I'm committed to being. And, to me, this is my gateway into radical acceptance, and it's gratitude. I don't think, if we just look at how human beings evolved, we were more worried about the saber-toothed tiger. We were more worried about getting an infection. We were more worried about, we had to be on the lookout for things in the world. And, our brains didn't really evolve as much to be thankful all the time. I'm thankful I this nice tile floor that I can spill my coffee on, and I don't need to get the steam cleaner out for my rug. Even those little tiny things where we just start programming our minds for gratitude, for me, that to me, when I can say thank you, thank you, thank you, instead of no, 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 it just changes my relationship with the world a little bit. So I love the emphasis you're getting on the self-care, Sherry. I think it's just brilliant. And that's how I start to get it when I'm just freaking out for whatever reason and having a horrible day, or something just fell through, or yesterday I couldn't get my printer to work and I was about to hit it with a hammer, and
that's going down. I think
it's
coming back because mine is acting up.
I blame Hewlett Packard, but getting with my cat sitting on my desk and isn't that nice and purring away, and just those little pieces that, God, I have a lot to be grateful for in life, and it's so easy to pay no attention to it. And to me, that's like the first step I can take into getting in touch with, okay, let's step back from the shoulds, let's step back from the no's, and let's just be here with my mom or with my partner, or whatever is here in this moment. And I don't have, some things can be awful. It doesn't mean I have to approve of what's going on, but until I accept what's going on, I can't take any effective action. And being in gratitude, I think, is one of the most important parts of that.
You're so right. If I can cut in, I think you're so right, Ben. And I think one struggle many people have is the acceptance. So what you just said, if you can't accept it, there are so many people that are in denial about what's going on with their loved one. And once you learn to accept it, you can formulate plans of how to deal with it and help everyone, including yourself. So I think that was an important point to hit on.
I'm going to jump in here for just a second. There are a couple of points. Something that you said about talking about acceptance. Well, when we think about our lives and we think about our lives continuums, we have a past, you have your present, and you have your future. And something that I read about in my book, those dynamics. Forgiveness helps us get our past out of the way. Patience helps us cope with what we're experiencing, and acceptance helps us make good decisions moving forward. And if I've learned nothing else from this journey through dementia with my mom, it's to live in the moment. Right now, that's all she can do. She can't worry about her past. She can't regret any future. Can't do it. If there's a sensation that she can't process in this moment, as soon as we figure that out, get it done, life is all good again. And I say to myself, you know what? That's the one thing I'm going to take from this. Always live in the moment. And this horrible disease taught me that. So as bad as it is, it gave me something to learn, and it gave me something that's going to help make me a better person as I walk forward in this life.
That's a great outlook, Sherry. I have to say that I think that it's so good to learn from the bad experiences and find the silver linings. Sadly, I have Sadly, I have been down that journey before and am currently on that journey again. And I'm a full believer in finding the silver linings. In fact, Conversations to Remember was born out of the pandemic, and I can't think of anything worse than that pandemic. And yet we had this wonderful thing that came from it. And so I try to just focus on the positive. And you can only focus on today with somebody who has dementia. And I'm a firm believer in quality over quantity. And so I believe if we can make this moment good, you can't focus on how many more moments there's going to be. It's this moment that you have to worry about. So I agree with you, Sherry.
There's a story I really like to tell from from, I'm stealing it from a book called The Art of Possibility, and going from memory, so it's not an exact quote, but the story goes, in the early 1900s, there were 2 shoe salesmen sent out to Africa to prospect for shoes. And, you know, were they gonna invest in a different country? And you know, the shoe salesman, 2 people went out, different regions, and one of them sent a telegram back that said, "Situation hopeless, no one wears shoes." And the other one sent back a telegram that said, "Infinite possibility, no one wears shoes." And, you know, which one of those stories is true? Well, neither one. They just looked at the same thing and they saw what they had created in themselves. One saw scarcity, one saw possibility and opportunity. And, you know, I think when you look at those, the caregivers who really are just out of this world, they look at the moments that they have and they see the possibility, you know, what can we do with what's going on right now? You know, and I think for a lot of caregivers who either aren't really successful or they don't have the training, maybe their family caregivers just thrust into it. I think a lot of times all they can see is, you know, right now, oh my God, what OMG, right? They see the book title, OMG, help. And so it's really, really difficult for them to respond effectively. There's one story I have from the very beginning of my career in healthcare. So I was leading orientation. We had one of our communities right across the street from our corporate office where I worked. So those poor people got everything piloted on them. So we were piloting the orientation I developed, and we were doing a tour of the community. And our last stop was memory care. And we were walking out, you know, I was holding the door for everybody. And the last person out the door was a resident. So I see my career flash before my eyes. I was like, oh my God, what did I do? And 2 caregivers, I mean, God bless them, 2 caregivers were right there. It was amazing. And the first one who got there said, "No, Bobby, you can't be out here. You have to go back inside." And you could just see the woman, and you could see her fists ball up and her pride come out and her chest stick out. And no, you don't tell me what to. And the second caregiver got there and said, "Bobby, it's time for spaghetti. You love spaghetti, right? You know, and we're going to watch your favorite show on TV. Everyone's waiting for you." And she said, "Well, why didn't you just say so?" And she turned around and walked right back in. And to me, that was, 20 years later, I'm still telling that story because it was the perfect example. One saw scarcity and problems, one saw opportunity, and the opportunity won. So that's my contribution.
That is something. It reminds me of when I first was beginning on the dementia journey with a loved one, and what you've explained was how you need to redirect someone. Excuse me. And one of the things that used to be told to told to me was, you have to sometimes not be completely honest with the person who has dementia and go with whatever it is that they believe, because otherwise you're just going to upset them. So in that story that you told, telling them they can't go out, we can't do that because that's just going to upset them. Telling them, of course you can go out, but we've got to do something else first. That's the redirecting. And that's the way to get them to stay calm. And it took me a long time, and I'm sure it takes many caregivers a very long time to come to terms with having to talk to their loved ones in a way that's not 100% honest, which is what we were all brought up to do. So that's something that really is important. And a lot of caregivers don't seem to understand to do that. And so I think it's great when they have the appropriate training and can do that.
So I'm going to give it a try. Obviously, this person pronounces their name absolutely correctly. I'm going to go with Jamara for the moment. Are you familiar with this exact person, Eve?
I am. She's one of our wonderful college student volunteers.
And
And
does
she's on
she
a weekly
hail from
video
a
call.
different country?
No, I don't know, but I don't know where she is originally from, but all of our students are here in the United States and
Oh,
go to
yes.
college here in the United States.
Oh,
And
they do.
to,
Okie doke.
and to give you some perspective, at any given time, we have over 300, maybe over 400 student volunteers in our program. So it's wonderful. Thank you, Ziamara, for your words.
Zio.
But we really do love love our volunteers because they are so committed to this program. We ask them, I'm sorry if I'm hijacking the conversation, but we ask them to make a 4-month commitment to this because it's all about building relationships. And I would say the majority, more than the majority, stay well beyond those 4 months. And we have students who are in our program who started 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We have some that have been on the same call with the same older adult for over a year. And it truly builds amazing relationships. And these students learn a lot that they wouldn't normally get to learn about the older generation. So it really is very heartening to see. So I know we took us off track, but that was because you put Ziamara's quote up there.
Off track? No, this is perfect. I now realize that there are so far 4 different defined people groups. A person who is maybe was born after me. I don't know that you have an age level. It could be someone in their 30s that
Well,
is homebound.
we do
But
have
we'll
an
do,
age level.
yeah.
We
Oh, you do
do
have an age
focus,
level.
yes, and we stick to definitions that are put out there by certain organizations. So, for instance, AARP defines an older adult, a senior, as age 50 and above. So that is our age limit. I say that as I am above 50, but we have people in our program who who are 50, young 50s who have dementia or who have health issues or physical
Sure.
limitations.
Sure.
And so this is a godsend to them. And then we've had older adults who celebrated their 100th birthday with us.
Yes.
So we have a big age span for that. And our young adults are, as defined by the CDC, aged 17 to 25. CDC defines it as 18 to 25. We give that little grace to 17 because it's college students, and there are so many
Right.
college students who start at 17, and so we
Mhm.
want to include them in there.
Yes. So we've got those 2 categories. I'll just say age-wise, but that's not the only thing that defines them. Then we have the other person in the house, in the room, even a neighbor or someone that older adult talks to later. Oh, I heard the greatest thing from, and now I'm going to try your way, Xiaomara.
I believe that's how she pronounces her name.
I
And I'll
just heard the
apologize to her now if
greatest
I'm
thing.
saying it wrong.
Yay, and talked about thus and such, and I'm going to give that a try. And so this other person knows, wow, there is vitality in your life that I do not have, or that I enjoy with my kids, grandkids. Then okay, so the person that's there, that one, this one, what was the 4th one? That I don't know. But anyway, I just love that there. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? If I'm going to host something, I really should pay attention to what I am saying. It'll pop back into my mind. Staving off isolation, making you a moving target for exploitation because someone else is interested in your life. Someone else is going to show up for an hour a week that is going to know if you express a concern. And it's like, so this person keeps showing up at your front door saying they're not done repairing something. You know, it's going to make you less of a target for someone nefarious. I mean, for a criminal mind, because you are not all alone in the world. Oh, I know what it doesn't matter. Anyway,
speaking of not all alone, one of the things that we make sure of is we never have one student alone on the call with the older adult. We always have at least 2 students on the call. We basically set the calls up with between 2 and 3 students on the call, and we don't allow a student to be alone on the call for everyone's safety and protection. It's also a lot easier to have a conversation, as we've seen here today, when it's a group than when it's one-on-one. And this is pretty much what our calls look like with regard to the 4 boxes. But we are very big on protecting the older adults in that way.
That is wonderful. And if it's just overwhelming, it's like, I just really don't know what else to say to this person, then ball's in your court. You come up with something else if that's the difficult part.
Well, not every student is invited to join a weekly call. We only bring on students after they go through an extensive training and a simulation. And if they're not someone that can handle the most challenging call we might have, which could be an older adult who really doesn't say anything but enjoys the calls, those students have to be able to keep the conversation going. And so there's lots of other ways to volunteer with us, but being on the weekly video calls, not everybody gets to do it. We only invite those who we know are going to be successwhen after a screening process.
Okay.
I just think that's so critical, Eve. The 2. So when I would volunteer in the past with children, I was, my other life is teaching martial arts. I've been doing that for 40 years. And when I was a volunteer, it happened to be with the Salvation Army, that was one course that everyone had to go through was protecting the kids you're working with. And one of the rules was no person over 18 is ever alone in a room without someone who is under 18. And they were, really proactive in getting in front of the things that other organizations went through before they happened. They were really very protective. And I love that. And the fact that you're thinking about that before a problem, so many of us are in that risk management mode where something goes wrong and then we try to make it better. That's a lot of what training amounts to so often, which I think is so backwards, that a problem happened, now we have to train, as opposed to let's create an environment where that doesn't happen. And I just love that you are doing, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant that you're doing that.
Since we're about to end, I'm going to go to Sherry. Sherry, would you show us your book again? Tip it down just a little bit so there's no glare on it. So tip it down where, yeah, we can see it. OMG, I'm the grown up. OMG, I have to be a grown up. Okay, I'm the grown up. So people get a hold of you. They look for praxis for care. And we are just zipping through. Ben, you don't have a book, or do you? Am I wrong?
Well, I do actually. Now that you mention it, I wasn't going to mention it, but since you asked, Creating Purposeful Engagement.
Awesome.
It's on Amazon. It's by me and a colleague named Kelly Ording. And this is, it's a book about how do we take activities, not ADLs, not activities of daily living, like, bathroom and bed, but activities that we do with people who are trying to engage with their world. How do we, use the outdoors, or how do we use cooking, or, keep it safe, but keep them working in their environment instead of just in front of the TV.
Yes.
So that's what that is. But the usual way to contact me is through my website, which is illumined.com. That's ELUMENED. There it is on the screen. And I've also got DementiaNewsletter.com, which is a bi-weekly newsletter. Got about 20,000 subscribers, and it's a free newsletter that goes out on dementia care, ideas, ways to reconceive how we think about dementia, and just information targeted specifically, in this case, toward home and family caregivers.
Fantastic. And we're taking an extra minute. Eve, what else do you want to be known for?
Well, you have our website right up there. We want to be known for helping as many older adults as we can. And like I said, we're giving it all away. There is no charge. So all you
That
have
was
to
my
do
question.
is sign up. There's no cost to anyone. We run on the generosity of others. I hope that people will be moved to donate. You can go to our website, conversationstoremember.org. It's right up there on the screen with the donation. There's many companies do corporate matching, which is a wonderful thing. So if your company does corporate matching and you want to donate to us, ask the company to match your donation. And if we try to get grants. So if anybody out there is with a foundation or a grantor, let me know. That's how we can continue providing this and never say no to any older adult who can benefit from it.
Thank you to Echo Box Memory Vault for just dropping in and saying hello. They've been featured with Teepa Snow and others. Thank you to my husband, D. Scott Smith, motivational listener who made me start this, and now you can't stop me. And Ziamara, who says, I agree, some seniors are more shy than others, and you need to be talkative and able to improvise on the spot to keep the conversation going and avoid awkward silences. That's no way to spend your hour. She says, thank you for having me. And boy, are we grateful that you dropped in and let us know your perspectives. That is so great. I just loved this. Thank you so much for each of you, what you're doing every hour, every day. I have to zip because it's time for me to go be with a person who's homebound in face to face, and they're gonna go for a ride, and I am really looking forward to their friendly interactions while we take care of some stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having
Really
us.
nice to meet everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
Bye.